right, and welcome to the Business Shower Podcast, a podcast for business owners to shine. Today we have Erik Allen, and I'm super excited, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Erik. All right?
First of all, Kelly, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's such an honor to be here. You're an awesome host, and truly an honor to be here. Yeah, my name is Erik Allen. I am the owner of Top Rated MMA Podcast and the Erik Allen Podcast, based out here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and do speaking and voiceover and brand videos and fun stuff like that.
I hear the voiceover. I hear it. Like I can just like listen, and I'm like, I feel like I heard his voice somewhere before.
Thank you.
So, tell our listeners, your story, how you got started into voiceover and podcasts, and just how your story shaped you into who you are today.
Yeah, I mean, the quick rundown is, I grew up in what I thought was a typical household, went to Sunday school, played Little League. My parents got divorced when I was 11 years old. I'd never even heard the word divorce before that. And so it was kind of a weird shocker, like, you guys are getting divorced? What is this thing, And my mom got together with a guy almost immediately that was very physically abusive. So he was an alcoholic. And so I watched him beat the crap out of my mom for quite a while. And in the middle of my 8th grade year, they decided, her boyfriend and my mom, they got pregnant and decided to move me and my sister and my soon-to-be brother up to Stevensville, Montana. It was population 1,200 people. They got 5 acres, beautiful property, 2 ponds, right by the Bitterroot River up there. They rented this house on that property. It had 3 bedrooms. It was one for them, one for my brother, one for my sister. They said, Erik, you got to live in the garage. And I literally had this plastic tarp at the end of my bed that separated the truck that pulled in. And, it was fun being out there by myself, except for during the winters when it'd get down to negative degrees and I'd be out there freezing. But, I survived through it. It was kind of an interesting time for sure. But, that was this time that kind of structured my life. I was like, they continued to, the abuse, the fighting, all that continued to happen. I was brushing my teeth one night. They came home arguing one night. And the way the house was set up was behind me was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage where I lived. And as I'm brushing my teeth, I felt God go, man, you got to turn around. You got to look at this. So I look down the hallway and I see him on top of my mom, just boom, 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 one shot after the other, just punch her in the face. And so I went up behind him. I grabbed a cast iron pan and I swung as hard as I could to the back of his head and I split his head open. And he turned around and he said, what then? As he said that, I took another swing and he did not get knocked out. He was so drunk. And I had swung so fast or so hard on that last one that I had actually fallen over. And I remember him standing over me. He was yelling at me. He was bleeding. And my mom jumps out of nowhere and lands like 6 punches in a row to the face and blood splatting on the wall. Cops show up, take him to jail for the night. My mom never pressed charges. I was actually kicked out of the house at that point, and that led me down this path of destruction for the next 10 years.
I hear those stories and I'm like, why? But they say that God has a plan for everything. So,
yeah.
And I'm sure that was your plan. So you went down a path of destruction for 10 years.
Yeah.
What brought you out of the negative way you were living, and what was going on with you? What was that moment that brought you out, that aha moment? Like,
yeah, the aha moment. It was an awesome moment. I that path of destruction led me to jail and bankrupt at 21 and, battled addictions, working in the music business, got laid off after a year, working at Starbucks at night. I was this depressed guy. I'd go back to my ghetto apartment and drink a beer and, put myself to sleep every night and didn't have any friends. And one night this girl walked into Starbucks and she said, hey, we've got this cool college age event down in our church. Would you be interested in going? And I didn't have any friends. I was depressed. She was very good looking. Absolutely, I will go. So I go down there and I ended up knowing all these guys from the church. Like, this is on the other side of the state from where I grew up. And it was like, man, I haven't seen you in 5 years. I haven't seen you in 10 years. What's going on? And so I think that God was planting the seed in me in that moment. And about a month later, it was Easter 2004. I was managing a band. We went out and partied. And I woke up Easter morning in my buddy's basement, probably surrounded by 15 people or so. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning. And I felt God in that moment go, man, you're going down this path that's going to end your life very quickly if you don't start making some changes. And I decided in that moment that I was done. I gave my life to Christ in my buddy's basement right there. And I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. And I called that girl up and I said, hey, I just want to say thanks for inviting me to that church event. I got her voicemail, and maybe I'll see you at the store sometime. And about a month later, we were dating. A year later, we've been married, and now we've been married for almost 17 years.
So it was like faith that she was supposed to be there at that moment to invite you to an event. It's just, listen, I believe everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And yes, everything does happen for a reason. Okay. So, Erik Allen, this is your real name, right?
Yeah, that's my real name. Yep.
Okay. So you came up with your real name. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you do in your business.
Yeah. And so 2012, my wife and I were kind of sitting around the house out in Seattle, Washington. We wanted to get involved in the MMA space. I'm not a fighter, but this was during the big era of tap out. And so we came up with the name Top Rated MMA. It was actually her idea. And we had no idea what we were doing. Didn't have a business plan. We just bought a bunch of stuff, said, this is going to sell. Totally not what happened. Like we got all this stuff and we kind of put it out there. And then in 2015, I got bored with the company. I wasn't making any money or anything like that. I put an ad in Craigslist. I said, who wants to buy this company? One guy called me and offered me a few grand, and I wasn't ready to give up. So I didn't sell it. I took about a year to kind of just get through the business. And then in 2017, I launched the Top Rated MMA podcast. And it was really why, the reason I started was to talk with MMA fighters and ask them, why do you want to get in a cage to get punched in the face? Mm-hmm. I had no idea what I was doing. I was in a walk-in closet, bad lighting, bad microphone, didn't even look into the camera, just really, really bad. Mm-hmm. And I ended up just continuing to stick with it and talk with fighters. And now here we are, episode 236, I think, dropped this morning. So yeah, humbly considered the #1 MMA podcast out here in the Northwest. Mm-hmm. And then in 2018, I came across a guy named Ed Milet, and I was hooked. I was like, oh man, this guy speaks my language. Started binge watching all of his shows. Mm-hmm. And then in 2019, he issued this challenge on his Instagram to his 1 million followers. Hey, tell me a 1-minute story of what drives you. Why are you passionate about what you want to do? What do you want to do? What's your business goal? And I submitted this video really not knowing what I was doing. And about 2 months later, he announced me as the winner of the Max Out Challenge. So I got to have a phone call with him, and it was life-changing, set me on this other path. And now I've got the Erik Allen show. That's really what inspired that show. And episode 111 of that show just dropped yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
So I have to circle back.
Yeah.
Why do MMA fighters want to go into a cage and get punched in the face? Because I'm I'll ask myself that question every day. And I'm yeah. Why do they? It's a
great question. So, when I ask them this, a lot of them will say, well, I grew up doing MMA, or I grew up doing karate, and it just transitioned into MMA. But then I've had guys on the show, they're like, dude, I have a federal offense and I can't get a real job, but I can go fight and put food on the table for my family. And so I love those stories. Whenever I have guests on my show, the very first question that I ask them is, where did you grow up and what was childhood like for you? One, because I want the audience to understand that these are just real people that maybe went through some struggles and got to where they're at. But I also want them to have this realistic, man, I'm going through that same struggle right now, or I had that same struggle, but look at this guy. He's been able to get through it. And so it's so cool to just hear their stories. I'm fascinated with people's stories.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. So tell me, 3 people who influenced you and made you who you are today.
My wife, for sure. My wife is definitely probably the biggest influence in my life. And she came from this broken home like I did. And so we kind of came together and we both came into the marriage like having junk, but we kind of knew exactly what we didn't want to have in our marriage. And we, spent 5 years just getting to know each other before I had kids. So I think #1 influence would be her. I think #2 influence, my buddy, Dave. I've known him since first grade, still my best friend today. 35 years later, we're still hanging out and still my best friend. I've been his best man in his wedding, unfortunately a couple times, but he's a great dude and love his family. Such an amazing family there. And I think, the last person that's probably influenced me the most was my grandma, my dad's mom. And I spent a lot of time with her as a kid. I remember playing Elvis 8-tracks as a kid at her house. As a very young kid, she loved Elvis. And so still to this day, she just turned 87 years old, still drives, still gets active. And still to this day, she just says, look, I go through my list of great grandkids and everybody and pray one by one. And she's like, man, I've been praying for you since day one. And she like stuck with me through the yucky years and when I came back to the Lord and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, those three people are definitely the biggest influencers in my life.
Oh, grandmas are the best.
Yeah.
And shout out to Mrs. Allen. Like, oh man, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
I hope my husband says one day that, you know, I inspire him. He doesn't tell me that. I don't think he wants to blow up my head. But yeah, he won't tell me that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So what characteristics do you feel startup business owners and leaders need in order to be able to thrive in their business?
Man, you got to be a fighter. You got to get uncomfortable to get comfortable, right? So you got to get out of your comfort zone. And one thing I always say, and you know, I learned this from Ed Milet and things is like, if you want to be a good speaker or a good podcaster or a good businessman or great in your marriage, go find people that are being successful in those areas and hang around with them. Because if you're just walking around at 85 degrees, but you want to be lifted up, go hang around those guys that are walking around at 185 degrees, and just being in their presence is going to lift you up and motivate you to be better. And so one, I think those characteristics is you've got to be okay with being uncomfortable. You've got to be okay with kind of sucking at first, right? And then you're going to get better and better. And so depending on the area that you want to go to, you have to go and find those people that are being successful and go around those guys. So I think that, but also being consistent. You know, if people are wanting to get up early in the morning, I wake up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week because I want to be able to be better. And that's my time in the morning where I can draw close to the Lord. I can, you know, work on my business. I can work on my podcast and things like that. And so I do that every day. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes I stay up too late and I have to get it, but I still wake up at 4 o'clock. So you have to be consistent to move forward. So I think being consistent and being around those people that are going to lift you up, being uncomfortable at times, and that's going to really help you be successful in your business.
Okay. So during those tough moments, how do you stay motivated and focused on making progress? So like, I know when business owners, we're like, this didn't work out. I spent all of this money or I spent all of this time and it's just not working out. So what do you do to stay motivated to keep going?
And I think from my show, when I asked fighters, MMA fighters, like, why do you want to get punched in the face? It relates so much to entrepreneurs as well. Why do we want to get punched in the face? Hopefully not physically, but why do we get the no's and rejections and failures and all of the mistakes that we make, but we keep going? Like, what's that end goal? We're never going to have a perfect day, right? Like maybe once in a while we're going to have an awesome day, but there's always going to be these days are going to creep in and go, man, you're not good enough. These voices of, you know, other people's opinions, and we're going to let that get into our head. One, we have to realize that our past and other people's opinions do not define our future. We can make a change at any moment and we can keep fighting. So you have to keep that in your mind. But if you want to get through those tough days, for me, I have a vision wall. My vision's too big for a vision board. So I took a whole wall of my office and I created a vision wall of things that I see on a daily basis. When I walk into the office, I see those quotes. I see my family. I see the property that I want. I see the house that I want. You know, and so that's what keeps me going through those tough days when I don't want to get up at 4 a.m., when I'm having a crappy day, but I can get up and I look at that and go, man, that's my end goal. No matter what's happening, I'm going to keep fighting for that. You know, one thing for me, if I open my eyes in the morning, it's a win number one. God's given me another day. And then I jump out of bed and I make my bed. There's 2 wins in 15 seconds. It's going to be an amazing day.
Exactly. Wow. So it's so interesting. You mentioned something a while ago, and then you also mentioned something now. So the vision wall. Yeah. That is a gem. I think I'm going to take that idea and I'm going to use this blank wall because I kept looking at this wall. We just moved and I have an empty wall and I'm like, what am I going to put here? You know what? I'm going to put my vision there. Thank you for that. And you also mentioned that you, I want to put it in your exact words, but I don't want to mess it up. So you mentioned that you, when I asked you a question about the startup leaders, said something about you did the podcast you submitted your form with the guy and it was a 1-minute video. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like when this episode drops, I'm going to have my followers do the same thing. Yeah. So I like that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So it's Ed Milet. And if anybody's not following Ed Milet, they definitely need to. The guy is amazing, like very genuine for how big he is, how wealthy he is. When I had that phone call with him, he shut everything down and he was very genuine and very interested in how he can help me be a better person, how he can get me connected with the right people locally where I'm at, because he had a house up here at the time. Like, that guy is amazing. So what he did was he said, hey, to my 1 million followers on Instagram, I want you to submit a story that's 1 minute long of what drives you. What are you passionate about? What are your goals? Why do you want to accomplish those? And so I submitted this story to him and really had no idea what I was doing. You know, here's this guy, he's worth $450 million. I'm this guy up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And like, you know, as a startup entrepreneur guy, and I'm like, hey, maybe this what drives me will maybe catch his attention. And so I submitted that and he kept posting all these things like, hey, here's a finalist. Hey, here's a finalist. And then, like I said, it was like 2 months later, he announced me and this other camp called Camp Agape as the winners. We're the only 2 Max Out Challenge winners ever. He's never done the challenge since. And so it's been fun to kind of go through that. And just that conversation alone is what really fired me up and really still motivates me today. His book called Max Out, you can get it for free. You just Google Ed Mylett free Max Out book. I think you pay like $6 in shipping, but it's a 95-page book and it'll change your life.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right. So here's a whammy question I ask everybody that comes on the show, right?
All right.
So what is the most important thing you learned in life? What was your life like before you learned it? And what was your life like after you learned it?
I think the most important thing that I learned in life is you have to keep fighting. You know, no matter what the trials are, whatever the failures are, you know, like I've always done that, but there was definitely times in my life where I gave up. So I like to say that I had to be a quitter. And one, I had to quit thinking that I didn't deserve money. I didn't deserve success. I had to quit thinking that I didn't deserve a great marriage. I had to quit thinking that I didn't deserve to have a great business. And I had to quit quitting. So I'd start all these businesses and I'd get, you know, be going and good momentum. And then something hard would come and I'd quit. So I had to become this quitter to kind of get out of that yuck. Right. And so I think fighting is that word. That's the one thing that I think I've learned. You know, my life before that was I started all these businesses. I'd start all these, you know, I'd get all these opportunities to go make some side money, side hustle. And, you know, I remember being in my early 20s and someone introduced me to, you know, network marketing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a millionaire by the time I'm 28. I'm retiring, you know, and like got hard and I quit. I never took it serious. And I think now after that, I've realized that, you know, now I put myself in places where I can get wins. I can be successful. And so fighting through the tough times and realizing that they're going to come, but knowing that the end goal is for me to be able to provide for my family and get us on that property that I want.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that you started all these businesses and then you quit them. I was actually just thinking of that the other day because I had a business before and I shut it down because it got hard, right?
Yeah.
And thoughts passed my mind about this, and it's just something about it. I won't do it. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep going, no matter how hard it gets. So that is a gem, everybody listening, because a lot of our listeners are like new and existing business owners.
Yeah.
Even though it's rough, just keep going. Just keep at it and keep doing it. Keep being consistent.
Yeah.
And keep your whys in the back of your mind, right? Because I'm sure your whys is your family and the big house that you want. So this is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm up at 4:00 in the morning. So like you got to keep that in the back of your head. So that's amazing.
Thank you. And I mean, I still work a full-time job. So, you know, I have to realize that the time management piece of it is when I get up at 4 on Saturdays, it's my most productive time because usually from 4 to 8, I've got solid 4 hours where I can put in the time. But during the week, I start work at 8 o'clock. So I get up at 4, you know, and get up to the office by 5. And then I've got about an hour and a half to really pound out, you know, podcasting and personal development stuff. And then I start the other gig. And so I would say, whatever it is, if you're starting a business or if you're in business, just acknowledge that those hard days are going to come. Know that they're coming. Not every day is going to be perfect, but you can keep fighting whatever you're passionate about, whatever your goal is. Do not let that out of your sight.
Exactly. Okay. So, you know what? I want to piggyback off of that because I have a lot of people that follow me that are working a full-time job. And
Yeah.
to me, I feel like, I'm not going to say it's excuses, but they'll say, I'm so tired from my full-time job. Like, I do physical labor at my full-time job. So it's not like I sit at a desk all day and I just don't have the energy to do, what needs to be done for my business. So with that being said, what are some tips that you can give them to be able to manage that time? I know you said you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, which is your day off, and everybody has a day off. Nobody works 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So, how like just give them a tip that they can use when they're working a full-time job.
How bad do you want it? Like, I mean, do you want to work the full-time job forever, or do you want to kind of have this side hustle that might turn into some nice cash flow? Like, I've been at this for 5-6 years and still waking up, and the side hustle is getting up there in regards to my monthly reoccurring income. Sometimes it takes 10 years to do your side hustle before it takes over. So how bad do you want it? My desire to be successful is bigger than my desire to sleep. So that's why I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And like I said, I try to get to sleep by 9:30 at the latest, but there's nights where, maybe I'm up till 10 or 10:30 or something like that, which is pretty rare, but sometimes, or I didn't sleep well, right? But I'm still going to get up at 4 o'clock. Because here's the thing, if I don't get up at 4 o'clock on Saturday, I'm going to be frustrated with myself that I didn't stick to what I said I was going to do. So you have to set those goals for yourself and stick to those and hold yourself accountable. And I would say, like, if you're working a full-time job and you want to do the side hustles, like, thinking, put it on your head, put it on your wall. How bad do you really want it? And if you really, really want it, then you will have no excuses. You'll just get up and make it happen.
Absolutely. Okay. So y'all hear that, right? How bad do you really want it? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Okay.
Like Les Brown says, are you hungry? Like, let's go,
Yes.
Like, you got to be hungry.
Exactly. Let's do it before. Okay. So tell me what you feel like your vision is for the next 5 years for you. I know we went to this big house. So tell me about your vision.
My vision, and people laugh at this all the time because I walk in my office and they see this thing on the wall, right? And it's got a cartoon, and it sounds funny, but it's such a big dream for me. But it literally says, if I can't pee off her front porch, my neighbors are too close. Like, that's the property that I want. And that's a vision that I want. I want the 20 acres. I want the house on that. And not only just like to say, I have 20 acres and I have this big house. What I want is I want the generations to come from my tribe, my kids, my great grandkids to be able to go, this is the place where we can have peace and we can get away from the city and the yuck, right? So that's my big vision. So within the next 5 years, I want that property, and that's on my wall, and it will happen. I think for me, to be a full-time entrepreneur in the next 12 to 15 months is pretty ideal for me. So I'm going to keep pushing for that. I've got a lot of things happening in the pot right now where I've made a lot of connections. Last week, I was at this thing called Prosperity Camp down in California with Greg Reed, 50 people mastermind, and met some amazing people, and they opened up massive amounts of doors for me. And so really excited for the opportunities that are coming from that. And so that's my goal, is within 5 years, be a full-time entrepreneur as a speaker, as a voiceover, podcaster, brand collaboration video guy, right? But then have that house kind of in the process, like maybe not have the house built, but have the property and have the foundation start going. And I'm all about not being in debt. So we don't have any debt. We own all of our vehicles outright. Everything is and so the same with the house, right? I want to have the house paid off ASAP.
Okay. And it's going to happen. We're going to manifest that for you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So signature question. And then we're going to start wrapping up. But signature question, what is something unique that no one knows about you, your business, or your products?
Something unique. I think something unique about me. Let's see. Well, one, I am a beard model. That's kind of not a lot of people see that or know that, but
I could just guess that by the look of your beard. It looks so soft.
Thank you. So it's funny because I just randomly so I'm on Fiverr as a seller, and I sell like, hey, you need your product, you want a video made, you send me the product, I'll do the video, stuff like that. And I put that out like 3 years ago. And just in the last year, I started having companies reach out and say, hey, can I send you my beard product? Can you take some photos and do some videos? Mm-hmm. And that's all great. But then what happens is, for some reason, my picture ends up on Amazon on like 4 or 5 different products. And my wife gets these texts from her friends going, hey, my husband found your husband's picture on Amazon. So I'm kind of Amazon famous is what she says. So yeah, so it's kind of the unique thing. Sometimes my picture will pop up on Amazon holding some random beard product.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Yeah, it looks so soft. How long did you take this to grow out?
It's just a few years. Okay. So what happened was my daughter's 11, and I used to grow my beard out for 1 month out of the year. It was just one random month I'd pick out of the year. I'd grow up for 30 days and I'd shave it off, make my wife fall back in love with me. Like, hey, I'm back, clean shaven. And then 1 year, I think my daughter was probably 3 or 4 years old, and I shaved it off, and she was like, Dad, I miss the beard. And then I just was like, all right, well, I'm not going to shave it because my daughter wants the beard. So I just kept growing it out, and I usually keep it about this length. I don't usually go too much longer. I'll trim it up a little bit, maybe shorter every once in a while. But I've had it probably consistently for the past 4 years. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. And I know I have some followers that actually have beard oils and beard companies. So they should definitely hit you up. You are a model for beards.
Yes.
See, his beard looks very soft.
Thank you.
On the camera. Okay, so before we wrap up, I like to ask my listeners, do you have any questions for me?
Do I have any questions for you?
Yes.
Oh, I would love to. I love asking people, like, why did you decide to start your podcast? I love talking with other podcasters. Like, what was it that drove you to start this thing?
Yeah, so here it is. So when I first started out, it was supposed to be the business shower events. I was supposed to have events as like a soft launch party for new businesses where we're going to have like kind of like a summit. People were going to come out and talk. I had the state of New Jersey come out to my first event. It was amazing. And the pandemic was like, boom, it happened. Yeah. And it was just like our state was shut down. There was no more events. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? The podcast was already in the back of my mind. So I just decided to just go for it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I had a 4-year-old that was in my house during the pandemic. Okay. And I looked at her and I was like, Nari, I'm going to start a podcast. And she was like, for business owners to shine. And I was like, cool. Yeah. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's where the podcast came about.
Okay. That's awesome. Are you a morning person or a night person?
I'm a morning person. I have been up. So we were up around the same time.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And what's that morning routine like for you?
I meditate.
Okay.
Try to clear my mind. It's very hard for me to meditate. I'm starting with 5 minutes now because I hear everything when I'm meditating, and you shouldn't. But I'll meditate, then I'll start cleaning, and I'll start getting myself together. Then I sit down at my desk and I get everything going. So
Come on. Oh, that's awesome.
And I work a full-time job too. I primarily work from home, but I do work a full-time job. So I'm up just as early as you are, and I'm doing business things because I also have a real estate company.
Okay, so cool.
I'm either sending out contracts, following up with leads, or, doing some stuff for the business shower. So yes.
That's awesome. Oh, I mean, everybody should have 7 streams of income at least. And so I love that you have the side hustles and the full-time gig and all that stuff. It's awesome. But
taught me well. I got laid off during the pandemic too, which is another reason why I was able to push forward in my businesses, because I was like, this is all I have.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think during 2020, my business went to a whole nother level. Like, and I've been working from home since 2015, so it didn't really affect my full-time gig, but side hustles, everything like that, man, it just through the roof. And man, it's been awesome.
This was a pandemic of lessons.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell our listeners how they can connect with you online. Put all your handles out there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. ErikAllenMedia.com is the website. You can reach out to me through that website for voiceover work or brand collaboration or, speaking opportunities or anything like that. I'm really big on Instagram. So Erik, ERIK Allen, Erik G. Allen on Instagram. I respond to every comment, every DM. People can follow me on there and, let me know if you have questions and more than happy to answer them for you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. So that is a wrap for this episode. Thank you for listening. Peace.